We are recording.
All right, we're live. So, and I think that let me just give it a quick second for our attendees to populate. That's enough. We'll start now. Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 10th, 2021 BAR Large Virtual Meeting. My name is Jay White. The board members that are present this afternoon are Leon Scott, Luda Subject, John Robinson, James Metters will be joining us shortly, and then I will need to recuse for item number 2, so Kara Wheeler will be filling in while I do so. City staff that are present this evening are Tori Parrish, Lawrence Courtney, and Linda Bennett. As per usual, the order of the meeting will be as follows. There'll be an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. The applicant presentation will follow. There's a 10-minute time limit, or if you need additional time, then please request that of the chair prior to beginning. Points are, brownie points are granted for brevity. Any questions of the applicant will be made by the board and staff immediately following that. And now any and all presenters, please clearly state your name for the record. And then any persons that are affiliated with the project, owners, developers, designers, consultants, should speak during this portion rather than during public comment. After the applicant presentation, there will be a requisite period of public comment. The same duration of time will be afforded. The applicant does not respond to comments made during public comment. And for those members of the public who might speak, please do clearly state your name for the record. This will be followed by city staff comments and a recommendation to the board. And then there'll be a 5-minute period of time for the applicant to pose a response or clarification to either or public comment or city staff comments and recommendations. That will be followed by board discussion and a vote. And at this time, members of the public and the applicant will not have the opportunity to speak. Those periods of input are closed. And the applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair. Just make sure that you get my attention and wait to be called on. Okay, so we have one item that has been removed from the agenda. That's 295 Calhoun Street. But otherwise, everything remains as published. Please turn off all your cell phones, other devices. And please remember to limit your comments to architecture only. Any comments related to zoning or livability, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, and trash, are not the purview of the board, and we can't act on them here, so there's no reason to voice them. Okay, with this, let's go through a little bit of the meeting protocol. I think most of the attendees or participants are probably pretty familiar with this at this stage, but I'll just say that staff will control the PowerPoint presentation. That includes everything that was submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants need to ask staff to advance to the next slides during the presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. And video and microphones have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capabilities to speak or be seen when they're called on during the public comment period. The chat and QA functions have been disabled for everyone. And then during public comment, please keep in mind the applicants and all team members and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. And just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have been registered will be called on in order by project, and members of the public that speak are encouraged to remain in the meeting for the completion of the item they have commented on. Staff will call on registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand in Zoom fashion will not be called on. All right, so board members will be polled by the chair for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member when voting should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. Chairman will reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if it's not been reread accurately. If a board member needs to recuse, they will be temporarily removed from the meeting, placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, we will call a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until we're ready to return to the regular meeting. Staff will issue meeting results, including staff comments and the board motion, to the applicant following the meeting. Results will also be posted on the city website. All right, and just as a final reminder, these proceedings are being recorded. All right. Agenda item 1, shall we?
Good afternoon. I'm Tori Parrish. Agenda item 1 is part of a project at 332, 334, 336 King Street and 36 George Street. The request is for approval for the 334 King Street mock-up panel on the west side of on the west facade. This is in the Heights District 3 and 6 in the Old and Historic District. This is the aerial. You'll see this project is at the intersection of George and King. The small gray area to the right is 36 George, and then you've got the first 3 masses here on King Street. Those are part of the project. This is looking northward on King Street to 332 King Street. This is an existing site photo. This used to be the Bob Ellis shoe store. And this is also looking at 332 King Street as well as 334 King Street. And again, this mock-up is for the west side of 334 King Street. So this is the main facade. This is 334 King Street prior to demolition. So this is another view. And then the arrow indicates 336 King Street. This is looking south with the project on the right. And this photo is of 36 George Street. So this is behind those buildings we just saw. This is also part of the project. And this is looking north on King Street with the project to your right. And this is looking south with the project to your left. So from that blue awning all the way to the corner. With the main facade we're talking about immediately to your left, sorry.
Okay, applicant presentation.
Hey, this is Steve Ramos from LS3P. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. I'm here on behalf of our client, Method Company. This is one building of really kind of 4 that make up a master plan here. And as stated, the facade that we are discussing is specifically the west or King Street facade of 334 King Street, right where the cursor is. And this site plan just merely states where the location of the mock-up panel is. It's that red rectangle that you see up there. Next slide. And this is an elevation drawing that shows what that elevation is going to look like. It's primarily, well, really the entire facade is made of limestone, with, of course, the exception of the window and door openings, which are wood. Next slide. And on the right is the drawings of the limestone mock-up panel. You guys probably remember 2 weeks ago, we presented the mock-up panel that's on the left side of this drawing, which is made of brick. And so the drawing on the right it's simply a drawing of the mock-up panel details that will be reviewed today. Next slide. These are enlarged details that show the typical conditions of that limestone. I think one of the great things about this facade is there's some real depth and heft to it. So you can see how that we have some real deep windows, and I think it's going to be a very attractive facade. Next slide. Just some more details of the jam conditions, and then the coping at the top of the building. There's some pretty hefty steel that is holding up those pieces of limestone. Next slide. And here are images of the actual constructed mock-up panel. Of course, we've had a lot of rain recently, so you can see it kind of looks like staining on the limestone, and that's just simply because it had, rained, well, just about every day. But we're very pleased with the way the mock-up panel has come out. The limestone looks great, the depth and the detailing and the returns of the windows we're really pleased with. Same with the storefront. I will say that one thing that our team is kicking around is the little knee wall at the storefront. Underneath each window, there's granite, like a little granite knee wall. It's about 12 inches tall. And we feel like it doesn't really fit. Now that we see the whole assembly, we feel like that granite kind of sticks out. And we're wondering if it wouldn't be better as simply just a wood knee wall painted the same color as the storefront. And I know I don't have anything to show you, so you can't exactly review that today, but I want to be transparent that that's something that we are considering changing. And if so, we would, of course, submit that to the BAR. But other than that, we are very pleased with the outcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any board questions or staff questions?
Jay, I've got a couple of questions for Steve.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Jay, how are you?
So on the railing system, there are two connectors that go from the second floor rail into the masonry to secure them. And I'm just wondering what that metal is. That iron, or is it painted stainless steel, or what?
Yeah, the mock-up panel on the right, that is mild steel, the railings. So that is steel. And on the call 2 weeks ago, I said that we were going to be studying a different connection because we were not pleased with that connection. We have not yet constructed a new solution to that railing.
Okay.
But right now it's attached to the brick, which is generally, unless it's a real bearing wall system, attaching directly to brick is generally not a good idea. So we are seeking an alternative solution of that condition.
Well, yeah, and it appeared to me when I was there that it actually is drilled and recessed in, and if those pegs were stainless steel and been painted, it'd probably be fine. But so that thank you for talking about that. The second thing is your thresholds. Is there something? I mean, there's something built in there to help prevent water at both of those doors from going in. It looked like a typical application, but and it was very wet. I was there today, so it was just very wet. But it looked like that could be a
Sure.
a challenge. The third thing is on the similar materials, where we're going from the material that is intersecting with the brick or intersecting with.
I may need to just interject for a moment because we're only looking at the panel on the left today.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I understand. I know you were sick last time. So I don't know if Stephen, if you want to entertain any questions about the right side panel or not, but just as far as voting and procedures and stuff, we're only looking at the left.
Tori, Steve, everybody, I apologize for that. Thank you very much, but I'm sorry about that.
I'm glad you feel better.
Well, then actually, I don't have any more comments. The rest were for the ones on the right, so that's fine.
Okay. Any other board or staff questions? Hearing none, do we have any public comment?
Jay, I'm going to ask Aaron Minigan to speak.
Okay.
Thank you. Erin Minigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society staff visited the site and attempted to inspect the mock-up, but were unable to closely review the panel due to its location at the rear of an active construction site. We do feel access is important for members of the public interested in viewing mock-up panels ahead of a meeting and something to be considered going forward. So while difficult to tell without up-close inspection, Based on our assessment of the material submitted in the BAR package and observation of the mock-up from the right-of-way, we are concerned about the thickness and craftsmanship of the mortar joints. Referencing comparable buildings clad in stone, such as 40 Broad Street or 10 Liberty Street, the PSC encourages the board to require tighter, neater joints as are typical for this material palette and crucial to the overall success of this important King Street facade. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment?
Jay, that's it.
Okay, well, so staff comments and recommendations.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
is there? Okay, this request was for approval of the 334 King Street West facade mock-up. Staff comments: A, joints are to be kept consistently uniform. B, sealant at the limestone and granite need to match the adjacent stone color wherever possible. Flashing should match the material color on or against that which it is placed. C, a robust quality assurance, quality control program is to be put into place to assure that the limestone is shipped, stored, and placed without damage. Damaged material is to be replaced rather than patched. And then D was per site visit, which we have done, and we did not have any additional comments from the site visit.
Okay.
Staff recommendations. Staff appreciates the extensive use of limestone on this facade, which will result in an elegant, high quality, and durable appearance, and recommends approval of the 334 King Street West facade mock-up with staff and board comments.
All right, sorry to nearly cut you off there. It's like you get all the comments and don't let you make a recommendation. Okay, any applicant response?
I think all of the comments are right on. Because the building is all limestone, really the joints are the one area where they basically need a lot of attention, and so they need diligence, and so we will absolutely be focusing on those.
Okay, thank you. Any board discussion?
Jay, I'll make a motion if you're ready.
Yeah, I do have a couple of comments, but but we can put a motion on the table. Or...
I'll wait for you, Jay.
Yeah, well, Luda, why don't you go ahead? I think you had some comments as well.
Just one. I heard about Steve was talking about this granite panels under the windows at the storefront, and I think it's a very good move. How I see it, they don't do anything. They kind of out of place in granite, so wood or maybe even limestone again, but the granite in that particular color is just not working there. So that's about it. The rest of it seems right on with staff comments.
Yeah. Okay, I agree with that. I think the granite slabs did sort of stand out, and I think that if the applicant wants to investigate another material, that's probably something that could be handled at staff level. I just had a couple quick comments about what I saw on site when I took a look at it earlier, yesterday. There are a couple of instances where the stone slabs are not really in plane, and I was there late afternoon, so I was seeing a lot of grazing sunlight and some really highlighted joints. So that's something, just from a quality control point of view, needs to be really taken into consideration. Make sure you keep everything plumb and square. The mortar joint widths seem to be relatively regular. The sealant joint that's at the floor line or at the flashing level wasn't really tooled as well as it should be. It certainly wasn't tooled as neatly as the mortar was, so that's something also to keep in mind. And then you've got a really tricky condition at the base of these flutes in the spandrels, where you're trying to tool the mortar to conform to the profile of the flutes. And I know that's going to be, on the second and third levels, but from across the street, it will be clearly evident if they're not tooled neatly and in in profile with the stone itself. But I would just add those comments, and I agree with everything that staff had to recommend as well.
I don't know if this is the right time to say it, but that was a per site visit comment that I failed to remember was the sealant joint. We did discuss potentially the color of that joint in relation to the other joint colors. So
Okay.
that was an ongoing discussion. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So any other comments or a motion?
Jay, I'll make a motion for approval of the 334 King Street West facade mock-up, incorporating the comments by the staff, recommendations by the staff, and comments and recommendations by the board.
Okay. So that's a motion for approval of the 334 King Street West facade mock-up with staff and board comments. Do we have a second?
Second that. John
Okay.
Ryan.
All right. Okay. So Ms. Subchuck, how do you vote?
Yay in favor?
Okay. Mr. Scott.
Yay in favor.
All right. The rest will be easy. Mr. Robinson.
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters.
Yay in favor.
And I vote yay in favor. The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and thank you. And I'm being very transparent. It's my first meeting to lead, but staff and board comments. So staff comments are obvious. Board comments were the things that you ran through, Jay, correct?
That's correct. And also Luda's comment regarding the spandrel or the knee wall material.
Yep. Okay. All right.
And
sorry, Jay.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I can't remember if I made any comments about that.
Yeah,
Okay, got it.
Yeah, staff and board comments. Board comments are easy because they're all written down, but staff comment, or excuse me, the opposite way. Staff comments are easy because they're written down. Board comments, if we diverge in our commentary, it gets really confusing. But I think here we were pretty harmonious. So, all right. So I need to recuse, right?
I believe so.
Jay, I believe I put you in timeout or just make you an attendee.
Just put me in timeout. It doesn't.
Okay.
I'm used to that.
Okay, Tori,
right.
would you give us an introduction on the next project?
Agenda item number 2 is 80B St. Philip Street. This is McAllister Hall, a dorm at the College of Charleston. The request is for conceptual approval for repairs and alterations to this College of Charleston dormitory. This is in the Radcliffe Borough neighborhood. It was built in 2002, height District 8, and it is in the Old and Historic District. Kara Wheeler has raised her hand. Is she in the meeting as the alternate? I'm sorry.
I'm bringing her in now.
Perfect. Okay. So this is an aerial view of the project site. The project is at Vanderhurst and St. Philip Street. Okay. This is an aerial photograph looking southward at the project. St. Philip and Vanderhurst going out on your left. This is the same angle, just from street level, looking south on St. Philip. This is spun around looking north on St. Philip Street. So the project would be on your right. No, yes. Got myself turned around. It would be on your right, okay? Here we are again looking south on St. Philip. The project is on your left. All right, and we'll have the applicant's presentation.
Is Carol on, Tori?
James, she is on.
She's okay. Thanks, Linda.
All right, my name is Eric Bennett. I'm an architect with CEMS and here to present this project. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good, perfect. All right, like Tori said, it's a dormitory, McAllister Hall for College of Charleston, built in 2002. The building is really a mix of a couple different buildings that are all connected around a central courtyard. They're connected with breezeways and exterior walkways. Two portions of the buildings are 4 stories tall and the remainder are 6 stories tall. And what this project is really addressing is basically a whole building renovation. The scope, the main scope is to repair the building envelope due to a failing stucco system that's causing water intrusion problems, some severe cracking that's going on. And the intent is to replace with a stucco system to match the existing color and style that's already there with all the reveals and joints. There'll also be a complete roof replacement. There's a lot of damage to the roof and a lot of patches that have been going on. The roof is past its useful life, so it's going to get replaced. Replace all the windows to match existing color and style. The big issue with this one, because those exterior egress stairs are all open and exposed, there have been a lot of problems with water intrusion, especially into one of the elevator shafts. Every time there's a rain event, water drains into the elevator shaft, shuts down the elevator, and just lots of rusting and corroding going on. So part of this scope is to enclose those exterior stairs with curtain wall systems and condition those stairs to prevent any further damage to the stairs. Again, railing, guardrail replacement. Lots of the railings are not visible from the street. Most of them are on the interior corridor, but those are all getting replaced because there's some severe rusting and corrosion going on there. Basically, that has to do with the design of that railing. It's a metal mesh that sits in a metal U-channel, and every time it rains, that U-channel fills up with water, doesn't drain, and rusted. All the guardrails are rusted out, basically. Along with all these exterior, there are interior finishes and replacements, minor structural work, including new expansion joint, mechanical system replacement, lighting replacement, and replacing the fire suppression system. So next slide, please. This is just our aerial view site plan. You can see that the dorm there highlighted on the north part of the site is part of a larger parcel, but really we're only focusing on the highlighted portion, which is the McAllister Hall. Okay, next slide. This site plan, all the existing site elements that are existing there are going to remain unchanged. So the paved areas, the landscape areas, trees, access points, the building entries are going to remain in the same location. Egress location is going to remain the same. The fire department access, which you can see on the east side of the building, and that fire lane, that's all going to remain unchanged as well. Just point out the stairs that we're talking about. There's 3 exterior egress stairs. One towards the northwest corner of the building on Vanderhorst, one at the northeast corner on Vanderhorst as well, and another on St. Philip's, which is on the southwest corner of the site. So those are the 3 stairs that we are proposing to enclose. Okay, next slide. These are just more context photos, just looking at the exterior of the building. Again, just want to reiterate, the stucco system will be completely replaced. The brick, there is some brick on the facade as well. That's going to remain. Not an issue with the brick, but the windows will still be replaced. Next slide. And again, just the intent is to keep the aesthetic the same, matching the colors and the intent of what is there. Just fixing the stucco system with a complete replacement. Next slide. Here you can see just a few examples of the failing stucco system. Again, this is really just a few, but there was a quite extensive report and test cuts done on this building in 2018. and just showed lots of water damage, water intrusion, flashing joints that weren't constructed properly. So all the windows, or most of the windows, have moisture intrusion that's gotten back to the studs, starting to corrode some metal studs. One of the biggest issues is because there's a lot of CMU masonry walls, structural walls, as well as metal stud walls that abut to each other. And that joint between those two materials was not really handled well in construction. And basically wherever those two materials meet, there's a crack and water intrusions happening. So just trying to fix all these pretty major stucco issues. So next slide. Here's the view of the guardrails that we're talking about. You can see just extensive damage throughout the whole building. That bottom right picture and the bottom left picture, you can sort of see what I was talking about with the U channel. So that metal mesh sitting in that U channel, basically just sitting in a pool of water every time it rains. So these metal grates or metal fences, metal gates are at all. So you'll see in a couple of these that it's a little bit of a security to build a metal canopy, people from climbing over the gate and into the stair, creating a security problem for the school. So next slide, please. This is just the first, this is the demolition plan of the first floor. Not too much to see here, just windows being replaced, gates being removed. Next slide. Here's the second floor. You can kind of see most of the railings are on that interior courtyard. There are a few instances where that railing is visible from the street, but I would say it's pretty minor and off of the street. But where those railings are being replaced, we will replace them with a similar style and aesthetic of a railing, just with a different detail, not the U channel that will hold water. Next slide. So that's the third floor, very similar. Next slide. Fourth floor. All right, next slide, please. So here you can see those two roof areas. Those are the two 4-story sections, and then the rest of the building extends up to the 6th story. So next slide. And next slide, please. This is the roof plan. The existing roof is an adhered TPO, about 1/4 inch per foot. It just has a lot of moisture issues as well, so that's going to be completely replaced. Next slide. So here are the elevations, the demolition elevations. So in that north elevation, you can see those 2 stairs, sort of on the left portion and the right portion, with the metal railings there, which will be proposing to be replaced with curtain wall and glazed curtain wall to enclose those stairs. Next slide. And the that bottom elevation, the west elevation, you can see the 3rd stair that will be replaced with the gates with the curtain wall system. Next slide. So this is the first floor. The colors here are just indicating the different units because we are going to replace finishes and upgrade finishes in these. But the intent is to install a new drainable stucco wall system because the existing system was not a drainable system, just a stucco system, but this will be a drainable system complete with a new air and moisture barrier with all new flashing and termination details. And then all the windows will be pre-finished aluminum, single hung with all new flashing and sealant as well. All right, next slide. Again, second floor, you can just see it stepping up. And you can see the storefront or the curtain wall enclosing the stairs just to keep the rain out of the elevator so the elevators don't break down, keep the stairs from rusting, keep those guardrails from rusting, and as well as providing a more secure dormitory environment for the school. Next slide. Probably just click through a couple of these up to the 4th. they're all quite similar floor plans. There's the 5th floor with the roofs below, 6th floor up from there. Just one more slide, please. There you go. And here's the roof plan. There are new rooftop mechanical units, but we've located those so they're not visible from the street, which there are some perspectives later in the presentation that show that those units are not, won't be visible from the street. The new roof that we're suggesting is 160 mil 2-ply modified SBS system with a granular cap sheet, protection board, and sloped polyiso insulation with all new flashing. There's been a problem with students flicking cigarette butts from the stairs on top of the roof, so tons of patches up there for that. So we really need to beef up this roof system to handle any student intervention, I guess. All right, next slide, please. So here you can see the new elevations. That north elevation, there's 2 new curtain wall enclosures with the mullion pattern, just trying to replicate the rhythm that was there from the railings with the height, and as well as associated with some of the other reveals going along with the building. And on the south elevation, you can see on the left side, there is a small section where that railing would be visible from the exterior of the building, but very minimal. Next slide. Here again, that bottom, the west elevation on the right side, that would be the new curtain wall enclosure for the stairs as well. Next slide. These are just stair sections, building sections through the stairs. What you can see on these is that the curtain wall will run from floor to slab above. It's not going to bypass that. The reason for that is just to keep the aesthetic of the building consistent with the reveals and the patterns that go in the building, just to incorporate it more readily with the existing aesthetic. Next slide. Again, this is just another section through another stair showing those new curtain wall systems being installed. Next slide. So these are a few details that we're trying to highlight that are going to be quite important to the project. That bottom right detail, if you can zoom into that A6 plan detail on the bottom right, please. So what you can see here is that have a structural masonry wall coming in on the left with a stud wall adjoining to it. And so where this joint occurs in the existing building, the expansion joints are not properly done. So there's really some severe cracking, as well as there was no moisture barrier that on the masonry. So the moisture barrier just sort of stopped at that edge, and you had some severe moisture intrusion problems. So with the stucco system that we're proposing, which is right now a Stowe power wall drain screen and Stowe power wall extra seal, that would, cover these joints really well, because they have continuous air barriers, air and moisture barriers, and good expansion joints. So that detail right above, C6, the section detail with no drip edge, this is a section detail at the floor lines. So here we're showing that, there's not going to be an exposed drip edge coming off that detail at the floor, but there's going to be, where these two systems come together, there's going to be a sort of a reveal joint that's going to be a little more aesthetically pleasing. So again, this is the structure of the building is a hollow core slab with stud walls that sit on top of there. So that's what you're seeing in that detail.
So Eric, just let me ask you a quick question. Go back to that F6 detail. So it's up a little bit. It's the window header. Yeah, yes. Right there. F6. So on the exterior, you're going to have some. Okay, I got it. I see it now. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we are calling out some head flashing there. Yes, if that's what you were looking at.
I missed it.
Okay. Really, we're just the drip edge at the floor line is what we were concerned about. So. Next slide, please. These are basically just generic details from Stowe, straight from Stowe. But they do call out where the material changes from masonry to stud. How that joint gets handled is going to be important for this project. Next slide, please. Go to the next slide. These are just, again, some generic details of some bases of design products that we're looking at for the curtain wall and for the single hung windows. All pre-finished, thermally broken. Next slide. This is a comparison sheet for the existing conditions and the proposed perspective views. So I think these are probably the important views for this project. On the left, you can see the existing with the railings and the gates. Those are all going to be removed and replaced with new curtain wall and glazed storefront, or curtain wall and glazed panels. Again, just improves the security, improves the moisture management, keep the rain out, as well as match with the windows there. So you can see the mullion patterns are gonna be very similar to what we have going back. And again, all the stucco replaced, but keep the joints, keep the colors all the same, try to keep that same similar aesthetic value. Next slide, please. This is just stair number 2, same thing. This is on just the different stair. Next slide. Same thing here, but just want to point out this one you can actually see above the gate of the existing. So that's not an awning. It's actually a metal mesh security device to keep people from climbing over that fence and gate. So that would be removed. No need for that anymore once we install curtain wall panels. Clean that, it would clean that facade up much, really nice and provide a more secure solution. Next slide. These are just some eye level perspectives views from across the street. You can see, really just want to point out that those mechanical units are modeled and they are turned on in the model, but you cannot see them. They're not visible from across the street from eye level. Next slide. And these are just more eye level perspectives from across the street. And that is the last slide.
Okay, Eric, thank you. Is there a public comment? And if so, would you please state your name?
James, no public comment for this one.
Okay, no public comment. Tori?
Thank you, Eric. Apologies, I did not introduce you.
That's okay. This is my first time presenting, so.
Me too. All right, so just as a reminder, this request is for the conceptual approval for repairs, in-kind replacement, and alterations to a College of Charleston dormitory. Staff comments are: A, profiles of exterior materials and elements are to match existing. B, stucco finish is to match existing. An in situ mock-up sample of stucco with representations of a typical window and storefront is to be placed on a portion of the building for review and approval by staff prior to the work. This sample is to include any typical joints, sealant, and flashing present. C, horizontal and vertical joints are to read as continuous at inside, outside corners and other plane changes. D, any flashing is to be minimized and painted to match the adjacent exterior material. And E, copings and other miscellaneous materials are to match existing. This is fundamentally an in-kind replacement project to address moisture intrusion issues. Work appears to be proposed in a comprehensive, sensitive, and thorough manner. Although noted as a new drainable EFIS wall system in places, it is understood that this employs the STO multi-part and 3-part stucco system to match existing material and finish. Staff recommends approval with staff and board comments noted and staff review of the forthcoming mock-up samples on the building.
Okay, thank you, Tori. Eric, do you have any comments?
Just one comment on the where it talked about the EIFS, the drainable EIFS system. Just want to clarify. So the as-built that we received did have a about half of this facade being eaves and half of it being stucco. So that's what we were going with. And then once we saw the, the test cut pictures and everything, we did 50 different test cuts on this building and all over the building and never saw eaves once. So even where it was noted on the drawing. So we're assuming that it's all stucco system. And that's what it's going to go back with, the 3-part stucco system. So no eaves.
Okay, thank you. Board discussion, any questions?
I actually have some questions. This is Carol Wheeler. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Great.
Thanks, Carol.
So my first question is regarding the existing operable windows. It might just be the illustration that we saw, but is it correct that all existing operable single hung windows will still be operable single hung windows? Because they looked a little flat on the rendering, but just wanted clarification. Yeah, for example, here, this is perfect. If you look at the windows within the brick, are those windows staying single hung windows?
Yes, they're going to remain single hung windows.
Okay.
Now, the college has stated that they don't want the windows to fully open, so there may be limiters on how much they can open, but yes, they will be single hung operable.
Mm-hmm. And then my second question is actually regarding this slide as well. That's actually the only item that's not an in-kind replacement, I understand. The storefront or the curtain wall in the stairwell. What will be the color of that? Have you gotten that far yet?
We don't have an exact color, but the railings are a dark green. I don't know if they're quite Charleston green, but storefront mullion colors will match as close as we can to the exact railing colors.
And I think for that it will be important that a section will be on that mock-up panel to see how far, when you study how far that storefront is set back to maybe match some of the other storefront situations on the building. I think that will be important. And then I think my last question was just regarding, I read somewhere on the submittal that you intend to add exterior light fixtures or replace exterior light fixtures. Will those be visible on the exterior, or is that mostly the interior courtyard?
I actually don't recall stating that as exterior light fixtures. I mean, I did state that we are replacing interior light fixtures.
No exterior, okay.
But I don't believe, I'm not sure. I don't know about that.
In case there are any exterior light fixtures, I would suggest putting them on the mock-up as well. Other than that, I'm in agreement with staff comments.
Okay, thank you, Kara. Any other questions or comments by board members?
None.
Okay, well, I have a couple of questions, Eric. If we were to go back to A003, so is the parapet that's being that we see in the new drawing, is it taller than the existing parapet?
It shouldn't be. No, it should not be taller.
Okay. Where the new glazing is being installed, where the hallways are, is that area behind the new glazing going to become climate controlled?
Yes.
Okay. Where the gates are changing, I saw in the drawings when I was reviewing them, there are a few that you can see from public right away. That will be part of what Tori, you'll be submitting to the city for Tori to staff to look at and review. And I did get the sense a couple of times when you were talking about the stow system that currently that's the system that's being proposed. Is that a firm system that's being used, or is that not for sure yet?
It is not for sure yet. This is what we're proposing as the basis of design.
So Tori, how does that work? I know that I'm throwing this on you now at your first meeting, sorry. But what, you know, we're giving conceptual approval. I'm familiar with the Stowe multi-part and the 3-part stucco system that we're discussing. But do things change with our conceptual approval if his system changes?
I'm going to get Lawrence to to speak to this too, but it's my understanding that as a conceptual review, a lot of those detail-oriented pieces, which we have looked at some details, we could look at again in another meeting. If this goes to a staff review for, oh no, that was for the mock-up. Lawrence, do you have any thoughts on that? Sorry.
Well, I think, Eric, that if you're not going to go back with the or go with the new multi-part and 3-part, then we need to know about that, and maybe the board should be revisiting that. So if that point in time comes where you are going to propose something like EFS, then it would have to come back to the board.
I think right now we're, you know, a drainable 3-part stucco system is pretty, we're on that. But
okay,
as far as the manufacturer being Stowe, I can't guarantee that.
Okay, well, let's simplify this a little bit further. Will the texture and the finish and the profiles of the new system match the existing exactly?
Yes, that's the intent.
Okay.
Well, I think I'm giving this. I'm sorry, Lawrence. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Well, I think then it becomes a matter of durability, and that's something that I think staff is comfortable evaluating.
So for me, this is consistent with the type of material that we might install on the outside of a building, be it, you know, stone or another option. And there's a ranking to each one of them. And I might feel differently about my conceptual approval of this if it was a system out there that might give you an appearance that's acceptable versus this Stowe system. And I appreciated in Tori's recommendation that, you know, it's understood that this employs the Stowe multi-part and 3-part system to match the existing material and finish. I think that that's written well. And I would encourage everyone to, as we're thinking about this, if we don't have an alternative on the board, that be a substantial consideration in moving forward with whether this gets conceptual approval or not. Meaning if it's Stowe, it's fine. And if it's not, then the choices are that we put it in the staff's hands to make that decision that is something compatible, or we'd like to see it back at the board. Just something to think about. And then on the, it was also mentioned under staff comments B, that a mock-up sample of the stucco with representations of a typical window and storefront is to be placed on the portion of the building for review and approval prior to by staff prior to the work beginning. And for me, that's really important because of the way that flashings are going to be installed and flashings are going to be viewed. And that, and of course, that's, you know, that's the most critical. That's why this whole project's being done, because of water intrusion. So, but it's, there are great opportunities for that to be done extremely well. And sometimes when they aren't visually, you know, there's a big hit. And those are all of my comments. If there are no other comments, is there a motion?
James, I have a question. You know, I would feel comfortable with staff evaluating, you know, any possible other substitutions and as well as the mock-up panel. But would it be important for you to see that, to have that on-site mock-up or on the building mock-up to be reviewed by the board again? Are there any thoughts on that?
Okay, Kara, was that a question to me?
Yes,
Okay.
or to the board, you know, if that,
Well, actually,
if that
I
is
think that-
important.
Yeah, okay. I think for me, what would be important is to ask Tori, given that we have this new, and this may not end up being Stowe, which might mean that your detailed drawings for flashings may be different, your sealants may be different materials. Are you okay accepting that back at staff level, or would you like the board to be involved?
I am comfortable with what you're comfortable with. So if you want to look at the mock-up, I mean, we're good with that. I mean, and the, you know, and if we want to word the, if we want to word this the way you talked about it a few minutes ago, perhaps there's a way to word the motion that if it moves forward with the Stowe product, it's approved, but otherwise maybe it comes back to for another review.
I personally, I would, that's what I'd like, but there's, it's up for a motion on the board.
Okay, I'm this is Kara Wheeler. I'd like to make a motion for approval of this application with staff comments and board comments regarding the use of the Stowe and Stucco system and the requirement to return to the board if another material is proposed, and final review of the mock-up samples on the building by staff.
This is John Robinson. I'll second that.
All right, Karen's made a motion and John has seconded it. Tori, could you read the essence of what Caro said, just for clarity?
I can restate it if necessary.
You're muted. Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion was for approval with staff and board comments. I did some shorthand because I didn't know you were going to call on me. Motion was for approval with staff and board comments with regarding the Stucco system. If a substitute to the proposed Stucco system is needed or necessary, then the review shall return to the board, and that the mock-up shall be reviewed by staff. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Sounds great.
Yes.
Sounded great. Yeah, and John, you're good with that also?
Yes, I second that motion as restated.
Thank you, Tori. Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Subject?
Yay, in favor.
Mr. Robinson?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Wheeler?
Yay in favor.
And this is James Metters, yay in favor. Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to just make an announcement real quick, because I noticed in the last few minutes our participant number shot up, and I'm really excited that we have a lot of extra people watching. But I just wanted to reiterate that the application for 295 Calhoun Street was withdrawn by the applicant. So if anybody in the public is here to watch, listen, speak to that, it will not be heard tonight. So moving on, agenda item number 3 is 431 Meeting Street. This is the request for conceptual approval for new construction of a hotel with a 22-foot tall ground floor and the request for one additional story based on architectural merit and context. This project is in the Cannonboro, Elliottboro neighborhood, Height District 5 and 8, and in the Old and Historic District. Did we get our board member swapped out while I think about it?
I'm back.
Okay, perfect. You'll see an aerial of the location outlined in red. This is the project site. This is at the corner of Wolf and Meeting Streets. The Elon Midtown Luxury Apartments are to the north, and the Homewood Suites by Hilton is to the south of the project site. And the portion to the southwest is the Skyway student housing.
Sky Gardens.
Sky Gardens. It was something like that.
We're just gonna sit here until you get it right.
Sky Gardens housing building.
Okay.
Okay, next slide. All right, this is a view looking northwest from street level. That is the project site right there with the white shed structure and fencing wrapping around it. This is a view from Wolf Street of the vacant project site. You'll see the fencing that we were looking at in the last slide. That's the Elon or Elan apartments on the back there, and that's also what appears in the next slide. So these are going to be just to the north of the project site. And that is Standing and Meeting. And this is also in the street from the intersection of Meeting and Wolf. This is the building to the south with the project site to your right over there. And that's the Sky Garden over there. Okay. Sorry, and then we're gonna hand this over to the applicant and welcome Stephen Ramos of LS3P.
Hey everybody, it's me again, Steve Ramos from LS3P. I am here on behalf of my client, the Shera Hotel Group. They are the future owners of this project site. I've also collaborated with many folks from LS3P on this project. We're all social distancing right now, but some of those include Kira Brower and Evan McElrath, who put a lot of work into this presentation. We are asking for conceptual BAR approval. In addition, we are asking for the bonus floor, the additional story at the 9th floor based off of architectural merit and context. And we're also asking to have a ground floor that's a little taller. We would like to do a 22-foot tall ground floor, all of which I'll talk about throughout the presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the site first, and then I'm going to move into the design. Next slide. This is our very well organized table of context. Next slide. There you can see the site. It's a great site at the corner of Wolf and Meeting. It has an unusual little panhandle in the back. We refer to that as the tail. But other than that, it's a really great site. The utilization of that skinny tail has been challenging, but we're really excited to be able to work in this part of the city. Next slide. There you can see the site. A couple other notable aspects. On Meeting Street, we have 4 really great oak trees, live oak trees. They're a couple inches shy of being considered grand trees, but they're really great trees, and they're a big amenity for the project. There will one day be the future low-line park. Our project doesn't actually have direct access to the low line. We're hoping to work with our owner or our neighbors at the Sky Garden to get an access easement so that we could get to the low line. But that's just something I wanted to point out. Next slide. This is just a survey, and you can see that the relationship to the low line, the corners of our site touch. Next slide. These are a couple of the Sanborn maps. Historically, there was a collection of houses on this site. I think there were 12 total. One of the notable things is there used to be a little court or an alley really called Williams Court. And you can see the railroad lines that once went through there, as well as there used to be a railroad turntable where the Elon Midtown project is. So that's just some interesting history about the project. Next slide. Some images of the site. I'm sure everybody's really familiar with the site. When I work on projects in Charleston, I become a little obsessive about site visits. And I live not too far from here. Just about every weekend, I put my two little kids in the stroller and we go strolling around downtown. And we often go to this corner. I think my kids are wondering what we're doing. I'm always looking for something to trigger some inspiration. But I'm also looking to observe, what's going on at a site. And unfortunately, there's not a lot going on at this site. Meeting Street, unfortunately, is a stark contrast to King Street in terms of just being a good, walkable, urban street with activity. Some of the things it suffers from is that, number one, the cars drive really quick over here. And because of that, you don't feel that great walking on the sidewalk. So wider sidewalks we felt like would be a benefit. Also, there's not a lot of active streetscape uses here. And that's a killer. Cities need doors and they need activity. And the architecture, in many ways, is almost a suburban style pattern. And there's certainly a lot of room for improvement, but we felt like the streetscape needs to be our focus. Doing great architecture, that's the price for admission in Charleston. But we felt like going above and beyond at the ground level where people can really appreciate it is what we wanted to focus on as our highest priority. Next slide. And just more views. Once upon a time, a Steve Ramos with hair designed that Sky Garden building. So very, very familiar with this site. Next slide. This is a part of town that the city identified as a transitional zone over a decade ago. And that's when they began to change the zoning to allow for more density and taller structures in this area. There's many projects on the board for this area, which will one day be the center of town. And these are just a collection of some of the projects that are within a couple blocks from our project. Next slide. Kind of taking a slight tour a couple miles south. We're always looking for inspiration from good Charleston architecture. On this project, we were looking at facades that had great balance and simple repetition. We were also looking at very well-detailed ground floors. I commented how the ground floor architecture on Meeting Street is lacking. So we looked at some of the best examples in Charleston. We also liked the idea of the piano nobile, which is Archie speak for a grand second floor. And here are two buildings that do that really well. And that is very consistent with what we are trying to achieve with our project. Next slide. Also, the idea of layering our facades to create depth and shadow, and also having high amounts of glass or large amounts of glass. Parts of our building are very frame-like. So we look to other examples of other frame-like buildings in Charleston that are very successful in doing that. Next slide. This is a diagram that shows you the height of the building in terms of floors. This site is zoned for 5 stories along Meeting Street. And then once you go back 50 feet, the zoning is 8 stories. We chose to step the building down to 4 stories for a majority of the height along Meeting Street, but then we pop it up to 5 stories at the corner. I always think that corners are opportunities for hierarchy in a building, so we've elected to pop the corner up. And then the building steps up to 8 stories, 50 feet back. And then we also have a 9th floor that you see in that kind of red color there. The area that I referred to as the tail is a 2-story parking structure. Next slide. This is a site plan that is cut at the ground floor. And so I want to point out just some of the highlights of the ground floor. I talked about that activity and activating the streetscape was very important to this project. We've made sure that all of the service elements and parking were pushed as far away from the street as possible. We have retail that will be on Meeting Street that you see in purple. Then we have a very large lobby that's about 5,000 square feet and an all-day cafe as well. That lobby has a grand staircase. It's a spiral staircase that you can see in this drawing. We really see the lobby as a public space, kind of like Charleston's living room, where you can go and grab a cup of coffee, have a meeting, hopefully when the pandemic's over. But it's also a place where you can have a cocktail in the evening. So that is really meant to be a highly active space. How we deal with the cars on a project of this magnitude is always important. We have a large motor court that is off of Wolf Street, so all of the cars will be accessed from Wolf Street. That is a covered motor court. All of the parking will be valet, so the valet staff will pick up your car where that yellow arrow is, and then they will park the car in the garage. We are using mechanical parking lifts in this garage, as well as car elevators. I could probably talk an hour on that subject, but it's a very dense and compact parking garage. And one last thing I wanted to point out on this drawing is that I think that having edges in a city is very important. And so where we have the motor court, we've elected to create a garden right on the street. And that garden provides a little gift to the street, but it also provides an edge. As opposed to looking directly into the motor court. And I think that's really important. And last but not least, we have elected to set the building back significantly along Meeting Street. You can see the property lines in red there. The city requires 10-foot sidewalks on buildings that are 5 stories and above. We have elected to create a sidewalk that is almost 20 feet, 19 foot, 10 inches. Why we didn't push it back 2 more inches, I don't know, but it's very important to us to create an active streetscape and to have opportunities for things like sidewalk dining. And we see this as another gift to the city. Next slide. This is the view from the corner. Meeting Street is the street in the foreground, and then Wolf Street is in the background or going across. Next slide. And this is a view of the hotel that will sit on that corner. I mentioned that the massing along Meeting Street is predominantly 4 stories. We deliberately kind of carved away a floor there so that we could lower the mass along Meeting, as well as accentuate the corner, which is 5 stories. There is a strong hyphen between those 2 masses. We've always conceptualized this as a building or a mass that's on Wolf Street, and then a mass that's on Meeting Street. And we use that hyphen to kind of articulate those 2 masses. Creating really exceptional architecture at the ground floor was a big focus of this project. The ground floor is brick with a granite water table. The brick has a lot of corbelling to it to create depth and shadow and richness. The upper floors are a white brick. There are pilasters that have been used to accentuate the vertical proportions of the project. We also have a pretty dynamic entrance feature on the corner. That is the entrance to the hotel lobby, which is this grand living room that I mentioned. That is a double height space, and we felt it would be very awesome if we could express that double height space on the facade to make a really grand opening statement. That entrance is surrounded in marble that goes up and around the entrance. So the building is predominantly brick with stone accents. Next slide. We like to use computer renderings to model the building at different times of the day to see how the light affects the material quality. That's one of the benefits of a building that is white, is that the character of it really does change throughout the day. So this is an evening shot. You'll see that the architecture, for the most part, it's repetitive and ordered. We're using symmetry to key in on certain areas of the building. There is a vertical kind of tower element along Wolf Street that I'll talk about later on when we have a better view of it, that you can see there. That tower element is also clad in marble that goes up the entire height of the building. Next slide. This is just an existing image of the unfortunate state of Meeting Street currently. Next slide. And this is a rendering of the Meeting Street facade. We are seeking additional height at the ground floor. We think that the additional height on this building just really makes the architecture that much better. Vertical proportions are what we're after. And I think the proportions and openings on this building are really going to be stunning, as is the detail. I mentioned that we have a grand ballroom at level 2. That ballroom can fit upwards of 500 to 600 people. So this is a large space. So it demands large openings and large ceiling heights. We're going to have operable doors so that we have little balconies up at level 2. And I'm just really excited about kind of the activation and dynamism that this structure is going to bring to Meeting Street. Next slide. This is a close-up rendering of the cafe space. So you can really see the detailing around those storefront openings. We took a lot of inspiration from some of the brick facades in Charleston that utilize corbelling to create depth. And we're really excited about the opportunities on this one. Next slide. And here is a close-up rendering of that hotel entrance. So you can kind of get a peekaboo into the hotel lobby. You'll walk in, there'll be a spiral staircase. We've got a little oculus in the ceiling. And it's going to be a very dynamic space. And being able to kind of bring that out to the street via these very large openings is something we think will make this facade really successful. Again, you can see the marble that goes up and around, as well as the granite water table. And then again, the rest of the building is sheathed in brick or clad in brick. Next slide. Next, I'm going to focus in on the Wolf Street facade. Next. From this angle, you can see that very frame-like, classy architecture wraps the corner. It goes five window bays. And then there's a break where there is a kind of a localized symmetry that is created around that tower element. At the base of that tower element is the garden that I mentioned. And That is a pedestrian access point into the garage, really, or the motor court. And you can see the kind of the verticality. You know, we have deliberately pushed back the massing at certain areas. For example, the upper floors that flank that tower, we have pushed those back. That's in the 8-story district. But we've also determined that in certain areas, it's okay to express height. And I think the new height ordinance allows for that. And so we think having a massing that steps back is a positive thing. However, having certain elements and accents on the building will create an even stronger piece of architecture. Next slide. Again, here's just the same rendering, but this would be in the evening, where you can see that the building will take on different hues. At the top of the tower, there is a pergola. We have a rooftop swimming pool, restaurant, and bar. So that will be an open pergola. And that will be hopefully one of the best views in Charleston from that perch there. And so we're really excited about that. I think that the tops of buildings are an opportunity to create an interesting flourish or crescendo to the building. So we've chosen to create this kind of open pergola, which is an extension of that marble detailing. Next slide. The top of the building has been something that's certainly given me great heartache. It's been one of the more challenging pieces to design, and I've included some of the process so that you can see some of the other versions that were studied. We found that everybody has an opinion on that, but I just wanted to share some of that process. Next slide. A close-up of the Wolf Street streetscape. Next. This is a detailed view of a portion of that Wolf Street facade. It's taken me a long time to get okay with repetition in architecture, but the more I've looked at Charleston buildings, the more I realize that there's great strength in repetition. And I think this facade illustrates how that can be very powerful. Next slide. This is the location of where the motor court will be in the future. Next. And this is an image of the garden that, again, is there to create an amenity or gift for the street. It's also there to shield the motor court so that you're not just looking into a void. At the street, we have created a laser cut metal screen that you can see. It's kind of a gold color. That screen can be used as a trellis to grow jasmine. We've created these stone portals that look into that space and also act as benches. And then you can enter into that middle portal that you see there. About 12 to 14 feet back, there is a fountain wall. So that dark wall that you see in the distance, that is a wall that has water running down it. So when you walk by, you'll hear the sound of water, and you'll have this really cool feature. We think of this garden as our Zen garden. So we've kind of treated it in more of a minimalist and contemporary fashion. But that garden is something that everybody will be able to appreciate and enjoy. There's also seating inside the garden as well. Next slide. Moving away from the building to see how it looks. This is down Wolf Street with the Sky Garden in the foreground. Next. And you can see the hotel next to it. The Sky Garden is going to obscure most of the western facade of the building, but you'll be able to see a little bit as seen here. Next. The Meeting Street streetscape. Next. And then you can see the new building that will be built right next door. That white brick extends all the way up to the 9th story as seen in this image. Next. This is an enlarged ground floor plan. Just, it has more detail than the previous site plan. But again, the key features are retail, cafe, and lobby. The very large setback along Meeting Street for the sidewalk and sidewalk dining, and the garden and motor court along Wolf Street. Next. This is the level 2 plan. The big ballrooms are in purple. You can also see the grand staircase on the corner in that 2-story space. There's going to be a catwalk that wraps around that space, which will be just really dynamic. Next. This is level 3, where you have hotel rooms. Next. Level 3 and level 4 are pretty much the same floor plan. Next. It's at level 5 where we cut off part of the Meeting Street massing to lower it. So again, that's in the 5-story district, but we kind of cut that off. Next. Level 6 is where the building steps back 50 feet. You can also see that along Wolf Street, we've pushed back the facade from the lower floors. Next. The 7th floor is very much the same, as is the 8th floor. Next. And then level 9 is the next floor. This is the rooftop amenity. When you get to the rooftop, there will be a restaurant that's open to the public. That's the area that you see in purple. There's a swimming pool on the roof that's on axis with that tower. And all that area is open to the sky. The rooms that you see in red, those are suites. So those are actual guest rooms that'll have really great vantage points. In most areas, we have a continuous outdoor terrace that wraps around. We've also included a 24-inch planted buffer around all facades that face residential areas. Next. And this is the roof plan. Next. And this is the 2-dimensional elevation of Meeting Street. You can see in this image that the building is very well ordered and composed. There is a lot of repetition, but we do make selective accents and breaks in the facade to add visual interest. Next. This is the facade along Wolf Street, where you can see the project goes from 5 stories up to 8 stories. And then there's that little crescendo at the top, at the 9th floor, at this vertical element that you see there. Next. This is the north facade that is directly against the Elon Midtown. And you can see from that rendering in the corner that you'll see the top of this facade. I think this will be a handsome facade. It's simple, yet it has elegant proportions and nice symmetry to it. Next. This is the back of the building. This is really the garage facade, which is it's just a blank stucco facade right now. We do have a little stair tower in the corner on the far right. But this facade is mostly obscured. Next slide. As is this facade. This is the west facade, which is largely obscured by the Sky Garden apartment building. But nonetheless, it will be a simple but elegant facade. Next. This is an overall streetscape view of the project in relationship to the other buildings. I will point out that some of the other buildings were built prior to the new height ordinance. So the Holiday Inn and the Elon Midtown were under the 55-foot height district. But whereas the Hotel Bennett on the far left, that is one of the newer buildings that is on the boards. So this area will receive larger buildings in the future. Next slide. This is the Wolf Street streetscape elevations. So you can see the building in relationship to the Sky Garden. I think these buildings are going to work very well together. They have a lot of commonalities, such as the base condition, which is almost directly aligning at the ground floor. They will have a lot of similar details and materials. So I think they'll work together very nicely. And the Holiday Inn is right across the street that you see at the bottom there. Next slide. This is a building section. Next. We can go through these slides pretty quickly. We wanted to highlight that we've done a lot of subtracting and carving away of this building. We're asking for a 9th floor, but the 9th floor, it's not as much about an area grab. I mean, we've carved away much more than we were asking for. It's more about putting height where we think it works well with the building. So particularly along Meeting Street and Wolf Street, where we've pushed the building back. Next. We've also carved away at the upper floors where it wasn't mandated. That was a something that we've, I guess, volunteered, which we thought was best for the building. Next slide. We've also carved away a lot around the sides of the building as well. Next. And then at the 9th floor, it's almost a half of a floor plate. So we are not taking advantage of a full 9th floor. And we think that's important because it's not about overpowering the context, but being thoughtful about how we mass the building. Next. And this is just a conglomerate of all of those images. Next. And these are floor plan diagrams that are really the same information. Next. This is the last slide. Working as an architect in Charleston, it's always a great honor, and it's also a great responsibility. When you work in an urban environment, you have a responsibility to the context. And I feel very strongly that our team has gone above and beyond what is expected of architects in Charleston. I believe we've created a really strong piece of architecture, but most importantly, I think we've done something exceptional at the streetscape level and the setbacks and in the quality of the architecture, as well as the activation of those spaces. We are here asking for conceptual VAR approval of height, scale, mass, and architectural direction. In addition, we are asking for the bonus floor, the 9th story based off of architectural merit and context. And we are asking for a 22-foot tall ground floor. Again, I feel great about what we've put before you. I think that what we've done is absolutely deserving of approval, as well as the additional floor. And at this point, I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board or from staff? I have a quick one. What is your typical floor-to-floor height?
It depends what typical is. So our typical guest room floor is 10'8". That's a typical floor. But we have obviously level 1 is 22 feet. Level 2 is 20. And then level 3 is about 12'8", I believe. And from that point, it goes to 10'8", 10'8", 10'8".
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move to public comments.
I do that.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So what is the significance of the 22 feet on the first level? What are you trying to achieve with that?
Good question.
The 22 feet.
Sure. Yeah, it's well, there's no significance to the number 22. We wanted to have tall ground floor and a tall second floor. And when you have a large ballroom, having a grand ceiling height is important. So the city allows for up to 20 feet on commercial spaces. And so having the ground floor be a little bit bigger than the second floor, we thought was just important for proportions. But whether it's 22 or 21 or 23, that specificity is not exactly important.
And another question very quickly, why is the third floor is different than typical floor?
We wanted to create a sequence of floor heights. When you look at most of the historic buildings in Charleston, you will see there is repetition across the facade from left to right, but there is often variation from bottom to top. So that sequence of windows getting smaller as they ascend the building seemed appropriate for this building. It's something that's very common in Charleston.
I think it's all that started in Renaissance era, and it's actually only first two floors were different, but that's okay. I just wanted to hear what your opinion here. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's move on to public comment then.
Okay, Jay, I'm going to ask Aaron Minigan to speak first.
Okay.
Thank you. Erin Minigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would like to thank the applicant who has met with our team on several occasions and thoughtfully considered our feedback. We have seen this design progress in a positive direction and are encouraged by the use of high quality materials, simple rational forms inspired by local architectural patterns, and articulated details. Ground floor activation on Meeting Street is also strong, and we feel the mass of the building is modulated well, with the tallest portions of the building pushed toward the interior of the block. While we appreciate the approach to height, mass, and architectural direction, areas we feel need further refinement include the tower element on Wolf Street and the primary Meeting Street entrance. As proposed, the structure topping the tower appears too heavy and reads as an extra floor. We are not opposed to a surmounting element here, but encourage study of a lighter, more trellis-like treatment. We are also concerned that the Wolf Street entrance at the base of the tower may appear cold and uninviting. And while we appreciate efforts to soften this area with greenery, feel it should be further enhanced with greater detail and warmer materials. On Meeting Street, we feel the two-story entrance is rather severe and disconnected from the pedestrian level in spite of the awning over the door. We feel there is opportunity to improve the pedestrian experience by bringing more detail to this focal entry point. Given the building's context among other large-scale buildings and the quality of design, materials, and details proposed, we feel this project may be a candidate for additional height. However, we do feel further study and refinement is needed in the areas mentioned. We urge the board to apply a high level of scrutiny given the scale and prominence of this building, but are encouraged by the current proposal and hope to see it continue to progress in a positive direction as it moves through the design review process. Thank you.
Okay, Jay, the next speaker is Justin Schwebler from HCF.
Thank you. This is Justin Schwebler from Historic Charleston Foundation. We would first like to thank the applicants for their continued communication over the last few months regarding the design development of this project. They've consistently responded to our comments and concerns, and we're pleased to see how this project has developed over that time. We would also like to notify the board that in September of 2019, OMS Charleston LLC and Historic Charleston Foundation came to a settlement agreement regarding the development of 431 Meeting. That settlement was intended to ensure that this project met the standards set forth in the Accommodations Overlay Ordinance Amendment, which was later adopted in October of 2019. In addition to requiring that the hotel meet the standards of the Accommodations Overlay, it also set forth intent regarding the quality of the architectural design, which includes construction improvements consistent with the standards expected of a 4-star hotel or better, and to meet or exceed BAR standards. All materials and craftsmanship shall be of the highest and most durable quality. Ceiling heights on the ground floor will be no less than 14 feet. Exterior cladding shall be authentic, such as brick, cut stone, smooth stucco, or clapboard, rather than composite or processed materials in all areas visible to the public. Windows above the storefront level shall be vertical in orientation with a ratio between 2:1 and 3:1. Window depths shall have a relief and shadow lines with a minimum recess of 4 inches. And designs such as mullions, string courses, trim details, brackets, cornices, columns, etc. shall be considered to create a textured facade that helps break down the scale of a large building and provide visual interest. We do not find any inconsistencies between the terms set forth in this settlement agreement and the design being considered for conceptual approval this evening. As this design for 431 continues to develop and migrate to preliminary, we'll be working with the applicant to refine the design further to ensure it meets the letter and intent of our legal agreement and contributes to Charleston's unique architectural fabric. Until then, we feel that the design team has created an appropriately scaled, finely detailed building that meets the standard for architectural merit, and therefore we recommend conceptual approval. Thank you.
And Jay, we have one letter to be read into the record.
Okay, I did not receive that letter.
Ooh.
There's no special power in the chair reading that letter. Any member of staff can also introduce it.
I think Lords has a copy.
Okay.
Well, in that case, let's see here. And make sure that I'm unmuted. Yep. Okay, looks like this is, I'll make sure that this is the right project. Yes. It's from David and Scotty Hoffman from 9 Pitt Street. And it says, we are writing concerning the project at 431 Meeting Street on tonight's BARL agenda, which is requesting an additional floor for architectural merit. In looking over the elevations, we see no outstanding design details or use of materials that would warrant architectural merit. This building follows a similar palette of many other recent additions to Meeting Street. We ask the board to deny the request for an additional floor to this proposed building. Sincerely, David and Scotty Hoffman.
Great. All right. Is that the total of public comment?
It is.
Okay, great. Let's move on to staff comments and recommendation.
Thanks, Steve. All right, 431 Meeting Street, the Wolf Hotel. This is a request for conceptual approval for the construction of a new hotel with an additional story based on architectural merit and context. The board will additionally need to grant specific approval for the 22-foot ground level height. Staff comments. A, while staff applauds the additional sidewalk width related to activation along Meeting Street to the north, as well as the gesture of the small garden space along Wolf Street, these features alone are not enough to justify additional height based on architectural merit and context. According to the ordinance, architectural merit is achieved when the project reflects exemplary architectural and urban design, utilizes the highest level of materials and finishes, and contributes to the public realm. The applicant should express how the project reflects each of these while addressing any key issues with general architectural direction. And just to be clear, Stephen may have tried to address some of these tonight, but we wanted to be very specific that there are 3 areas that need to be met. B, the entry portal on Meeting Street is oversized and should better address human scale at the pedestrian level. C, it is noted that the 20-foot height of the second floor is driven by the placement of the grand ballroom and meeting spaces at this level. This in turn is driving the 22-foot height of the first floor, which should be of equal or greater height. These heights have an impact on the exterior massing in architectural language. These should be adjusted to further reduce the overall height of the building along Meeting Street. D, the portion of the project against Meeting Street utilizes 4 stories and is a very successful part of the composition. The massing and language should wrap the corner with the 5th floor more closely resembling what is currently being shown at the 6th floor with an open corner above the 4th floor. E, the garden feature along Wolf Street is interior and could be more inviting if placed as an open recess into the building facade to allow for more natural light and direct pedestrian access. Staff recommends further study and or clarification for how this feature will receive daylighting and be activated. F, the trellis at the 9th floor extends the height of the vertical element on this already tall facade and should be eliminated. The other components at this floor are well set back and unobtrusive. G, staff recommends that the applicant explore and clarify how the project will address the future low line, both with the potential of a physical link and in the appearance of the corner of the parking garage from the low line. The low line is a public right of way and therefore BAR has purview over the building's appearance when viewed from it. At present, there are no images of how the building will look from the low line, and nothing seems to address the low line other than possibly the amenity deck at the 3rd floor over the parking. H, applicant shall work with the Parks Department regarding the pruning of street trees to accommodate the future building. And I, applicant shall resolve any pending BZA site design issues regarding protected trees existing on the site within the property borders. Staff feels that these will be resolved, but the design could require revision if impacted. Staff recommends deferral with board and staff comments, with deferral of the additional floor for architectural merit and context, and deferral of additional height at the 1st floor.
Okay, thank you. A moment for an applicant response.
Sure. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for all of their comments and contributions. We had a lot of meetings with everybody that spoke today, and everybody contributed, so thank you. In terms of the comments, if you could put the last slide back up, I guess it's the previous slide. Or the one that has the renderings on it. There we go. I'll address the comments. In terms of the taller floors, particularly the ground floor and the 2nd floor, I did re-look at the ordinance again. For non-residential floors, the ordinance says that floors should be a minimum of 14 feet and a maximum of 20, and that the BAR can grant a waiver up to 25 feet based off of architectural merit and context. But aside from the semantics of the zoning language, as I was walking to work today, I walked down King Street and I was specifically taking notice of the taller storefronts. Buildings like Reed Brothers, the Williams Sonoma building, the Garden Theater building, all have these very tall openings at the ground floor, and they are just stunning. I mean, they're absolutely stunning. And if they can work on those buildings, I have no doubt that the scale of these openings will work on this building. I have no doubt. The tower top that you see on Wolf Street, we just heard 3 separate opinions. It's kind of an artistic piece, so it's very subjective in nature, and I think that everybody will have their own opinion, and that's great. I can only tell you that my goal was to create an interesting top to the building that will add to the skyline, that it would have prominence, but also be light and delicate. And so that was our goal for the project. I don't think removing it would be a good thing. I think it does enhance and add to the building. The next comment was in regards to the garden. We absolutely want the garden to be warm and inviting, and we want to make sure that the plants will grow. I said in the presentation, I'm a big proponent of edges in cities, so we deliberately created an open screen, but there will absolutely be translucency into that garden. And I think it's going to be a really special little space. And I also like the idea of outdoor rooms, and that was the intent behind that design. The entry portal that you see into the lobby, I'll go back to my original statement about these large formal entrances to buildings. I think when done well, they can be just exquisite and really add to the architecture. And if we were to cut that thing in half, the proportions would just be off. The next comment was about the 5-story corner. This is an example of what I call no good deed goes unpunished. We deliberately removed 3/4 of the 5th floor on Meeting Street to step the mast down, and to be asked to remove more of it. I don't know if it's unfair, but I don't think it would help the architecture. I think the massing of the 5 stories and the 4 stories that are broken clearly by the hyphen, I think works very well. I think the massing is very tectonic and deliberate. And I think pushing back that 5th floor to create another step would create some extra fuss that I don't think would help. And I think it would also hurt the proportions of that entrance facade, which to me works very well. In regards to the trees along Meeting Street, we've well aware of those trees. They're a great amenity to the site, and we are lawfully required to make sure we attend to those trees. So we will absolutely do so through the TRC process, and they will remain on site. The low-lying facade, that's an area that we need to improve. I realize that. Because we don't have direct access to the low line, we were not able to get any programmatic elements there that really work with the building. But we have had several talks with the owners of the Elon Midtown project. They are the folks that will look at that piece of the building, and things we've discussed are things like a mural, as well as a green wall to add some visual interest to that facade. And lastly, architectural merit. You asked me to specifically address the point, so I will read it for everybody. Architectural merit means a project that reflects exemplary architecture and urban design, utilizes the highest levels of materials and finishes, and contributes to the public realm. I've now been working on projects in Charleston for going on 14 years. And so I've had a lot of experience in Charleston, and I also take note of what other people are doing in Charleston. And I'm very confident that this building is of exemplary architecture and urban design. I can't point to a specific element because it's really about the synergy of the parts. And when I look at these images, I see exemplary architecture and urban design. In terms of highest levels of materials and finishes, the building is predominantly clad in brick, richly detailed brick. We're going to really put a mason to work on this project. We also have marble and granite accents to the project. And to my expectation, those are high levels of finishes and materials. And lastly, the contribution to the public realm. I feel like we've gone above and beyond. When I look at the sad state of things now, and I look at what we're putting forth, I feel great about it. I feel like if this doesn't meet that criteria, then I don't know what would. So I appreciate the feedback. I know we're going to roll up our sleeves and continue to make this a better project, but I respectively disagree with the city staff that this project does not meet that criteria. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board discussion.
Steve, you caught me with something with the Reed Brothers building, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the Reed Brothers building now on on my phone, and what drove your primary entry here? What drove that in your design?
Sure. Well, we knew that having an entrance near the corner was important, and having an entrance on Beating Street. So that was kind of step one in terms of the location. We also knew that we had this dynamic two-story space that is just within the building. So having a vertical expression of that space on the building was an opportunity that we felt like we had to take. The predominant facade of the Meeting Street building is very reserved and repetitive, but having a moment to create this dynamic entrance was a great opportunity. In terms of comparison, the Garden Theater is probably a better comparison in terms of this entrance porthole that pops up to create this vertical entrance. My reference to the Reed Brothers was really about the tall storefront. That building has a tall ground floor.
Okay, I might have another question, but please move on.
Okay, we're just going to sit here and watch you think.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I might jump in just very quickly. So, oh no, go ahead, Leon. Sorry.
Just real quick. Thanks, Jay. I'm a little need some clarity between the balcony on Wolf Street and the balconies on Meeting Street. Just from the renderings, the Meeting Street balconies appear to be usable from the renderings as you see people out on the balcony. However, on the Wolf Street side, they appear not to be. Is that the case?
No, they're all usable. They all have doors that would open. It's just that in the renderings, we didn't show them all open. We only showed some of them open for just context, but they are all operable doors.
Okay. Was that? I noticed some of the buildings used as example. Not only building that James is discussing, but you also showed that area, sort of the 200 block of Meeting Street. I think there's where the Hyman's buildings are. They have the large glass. Large glass front. Was that somewhat the idea of capturing that second floor balcony, along with the sort of first floor glass?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The better precedent would be the One Broad Street building that I showed, which has balconies at level 2. There's a lot of good examples along Broad where you have these level 2 balconies.
I'm thinking more of the entrances and the ground level glass. I'm sorry, I've gotten away from the balcony, but the ground level glass from that, again, 200 block, is that the sort of attempt to capture that look of the again, referring back to that sort of whole Hyman's and
Sure.
and so forth, that storefront there?
Yeah, the reference to the Meeting Street buildings was about the large amount of glass openings and the layering to those facades. Those facades have very large glass openings, but there's depth and layering.
Okay, that's it. I still have a question. Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll keep my comments probably uncharacteristically brief. I actually think, in recent months, we've seen ever increasing pressure and public interest in this little corner of the ordinance about architectural merit and context. Been a lot of discussions about that because virtually every project now pursues this. This proposal, though, while pursuing an additional floor, is masked such that it really is quite graceful, I think. The way that the massing is broken on this building, the way it relates to the street, especially considering the way that it mitigates the significant difference between the old zoning heights and the new zoning heights for this very block. I think that's pretty strong. I actually think that the merit test is met with this project, both in terms of the additional floor, which is largely outdoor space, and in terms of the 2 extra feet on the first floor. It makes sense to have a little bit extra height there because with the weight of the building's base, it's compressing the visually compressing the height of the first floor windows. So if you made it 20 feet floor to floor to match the second floor, it would look too compressed. And I'm kind of surprised that the applicant didn't draw on another precedent that is generally well accepted in Charleston, and that's the Francis Marion Hotel, which it has its principal ballrooms on the second floor as well. Works just fine. And the only thing I would say about this project is that, and I think some of the staff and public comments have sort of touched on this a little bit, almost all the elements of scale are just a little bit attenuated. They're a little bit exaggerated. And, if you look at these renderings and ignore the scale figures, you would think it's a very different scale building, but all of this glass is huge. That might be great for the guest's experience, but I have to ask, and I used to ask this question a lot, but I have to ask, have y'all priced this out, and is this within range?
I knew you would ask that. And so yes, we have. We've been designing this building for 8 months. And so one of the reasons we haven't been here is to try to get the design intent aligned with the budget.
Okay.
We actually had more glass at one point.
The garden feature that's on Wolf Street, I actually don't mind that screen. There's a great tradition of private gardens that play peekaboo with you on the sidewalk, and they're residential gardens, but still this applies. Although I think that this space is sort of isolated. It's surrounded by vehicular circulation, and I don't see it being occupied that frequently, but the screen positioned at the edge of the sidewalk doesn't bother me at all. And this is one of those instances where I think I'm in pretty broad disagreement with the staff comments and recommendation. But not to do that on Tori's first night at the helm, but might as well break you in. But I actually think that this is I think this is a very successful proposal, and final thing I'll say, I was also not aware of the extent of conditions that came about as a result of the agreement with HCF. Pretty good thing that it seems like the bulk of public comment is in concurrence with that, because if we hated everything that they required you to do, you'd really be in a pickle. So that's all I'll say. I would support conceptual approval with this project, and I would support the additional height on the first floor and as well as the ninth floor. And whatever motion we make, we do need to specifically reference both those requests for additional height.
I would second much of what Jay has said. I think the elements with this being a marquee corner, or potentially one day a marquee corner, is important. I have some reservations about what has not been shown regarding the low line, because I think years from now it's also possible that the low line facade may be as important a facade as the Wolf and Meeting corner. I appreciate the applicant's attention to looking at fenestration and repetition elements and facades from left to right. I think you're also correct about having some differences from bottom to top. I'm looking out my window right now, or I could until the sun went down a minute ago, at number 19 Broad Street, the former home of the Post and Courier, and it also has similar massing. I like the depth of the elements at the street level. I think regardless of how the garden feature is utilized, it is a very creative solution to the vexing problem of figuring out how to manage traffic and hide automobiles. And so I think it's more than a gesture. I think it's a pretty creative solution to a sticky problem. Regarding the 22-foot height and the dramatic entryway, which I guess is going to be cased in marble, I think I also think it's appropriate. I almost think it's missing something in terms of in terms of a depth element, but I can't put my finger on it, and I'm not an architect, so I'm not going to speak to that, other than to say that I think that this is very well composed. I think that the applicant has made very diligent efforts to explain why the addition of the floor makes sense in being offset, and I think that the attention to taking a massive building and breaking it up into what I would call three pretty distinctive elements that all have architectural merit is pretty impressive. So with great respect and deference to staff's concerns and knowing that they will continue to closely monitor the development of the details, I too would recommend conceptual approval. And I think that the project has a lot of merit.
This is Hilda Sopchuk. So I am actually want to say that this building design seems like one of the better ones in comparison to what we already have, the Meeting Street, and particularly that side of the Meeting Street. To me, the proportions of the different floor levels and levels above well established. I already mentioned Renaissance because it's kind of reminds me organization of the some of the better Renaissance examples of the residential large residential buildings, and the entrance is actually not unusual. The two-story celebrated entrance to the building. The only thing I think there could be, I may suggest, is that maybe heavier marquee, a little bit more elaborate there rather than just a slim canopy. That may well help to emphasize that door. I think 22 feet for the first level is actually appropriate because essentially, you know, when we were looking at this, you know, 2D elevation or 3D perspectives, but when we will be on the ground, all the heights will be a little bit more diminished. So that 22 feet and 20 feet above will help to celebrate and emphasize the public spaces in this building. The tower, it's a little bit bothersome to me because of this height, and you know it's on a Wall Street, so it's a more arterial street, but the highest side of the building is there. So I'm not sure about topping with that such a heavy pergola. Maybe it needs somewhat lacy topping there, but maybe it needs to be restudied a little bit and make it more airy. Another thing is entrances, drive-in entrances to the motor core. They may need to be, they really just open holes, and they may need to be studied a little bit with some screening because I don't know if you need 22 feet or whatever, hole in the wall in there. As far as the garden, walking through Charleston and poking into this residential gardens is always the pleasure, and they're usually behind the heavy screens of fences and all that. So I think it's nice. It's just maybe too small for what you're trying to do there. But it's just maybe the Wall Street probably will be more and more animated, and maybe it's good that that garden is on Wall Street side, so the people will be connecting between Meeting and King, and maybe enjoying that garden a little bit more. So all that said, for me, I also think that sounds like all three merits of architectural merits are met here, and the top floor is not that visible, but at the same time, it's more of the public floor and addresses the rooftop uses. So I also think I would be in support of the conceptual approval at this time.
Okay, so Jay, I am going to be brief and just ask Steve when he comes back to address the low-line questions that have already been brought up. The Jay's comment about the volume of the glass, I had that same. Like it's significant. So just spend a little time on why that is what it is, and your thoughts about the appropriateness of the volume, which obviously you think it is, because or maybe it should be more. But and look at the trellis and the footprint of the trellis on the top of the building, and just the placement of it, where it is versus recessed in more. I did want to point out that you had very nice cars in the motor court. I don't know how many people actually noticed those cars you put in there, but they were very nice.
That's my personal collection.
Yes. And then I just want to tell you, I still do struggle some with the entrance, the opening, but I actually struggle more with it after reference was made to Reed Brothers, the Garden Theater, One Broad, and even Jay mentioned Francis Marion, because I see in all those something that I don't see with here, and I didn't feel as strongly about not really understanding it here, except that it's being driven by the interior use, especially after I looked at those other buildings. But as John said, I'm not an architect on the board, so that's my just my feeling. And with that, Jay, I think you'd be open for a motion.
Yes, I would.
So move for conceptual.
Very quick, I want to add to that, entrance again. Interior use should be reflected by exterior expression. So, and that's kind of what is happening here, but also in a more modernized way. So again, that's kind of my opinion.
Okay, Jay, conceptual approval for height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction. And approval for if it needs to be specifically called out, the 22 tall ground floor, and the additional story for architectural merit and context.
Okay,
I
so we
will
have a
second
motion.
that.
Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded, and that motion is conceptual approval for height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction, and then approval for the 22-foot ground floor and 9th floor based on architectural merit and context. So that got it right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Robin. Yes. Go. Yes.
Could we add that one point about the entrances to the motor core. It needs to be addressed a little bit better.
Okay. So that would need to be amended.
So
Preferably
Jay,
by
I
James.
didn't really have an issue with that. I have no problem adding that's fine. No problem.
Okay. So that would be amending that motion to also include board comments on motor court.
Board comments on motor courts, yeah. Or you could just put board comments, period. Okay.
Including board comments. Okay, so
There we
let me
go.
reread this just because we should. So conceptual approval of height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction. Approval for 22-foot ground floor and ninth floor based upon architectural merit and context, also including board comments. All right, if that is accurate, then I'll call the roll. Sounds like it is. All right, Mr. Robinson, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Okay. Mr. Scott.
Yay in favor.
All right, Ms. Subchuck.
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters.
Yay in favor.
I vote yay in favor. Motion carries 5-1.
Thanks, Steve.
5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. As just as a point, when you guys do board comments, you mentioned one specifically about the comments on the motor court entrances. Are you including other things that you talked about? Do we need to clarify those that, when we make that motion that includes board comments, should we bullet point those items? Or was that the only one?
No, I think we just included the total of board comments. And I think, I'm generally comfortable with that so long as there's not a lot of dissonance between various board members' comments. Like if one board member said, I love the motor court, and the other board member said, I hate it, then we would need to clarify. But here it seemed like there were a number of specific items, such as lightening the pergola, addressing the entrance at Meeting Street, studying the motor court entrances, addressing the scale of the garden, address the scale of the glazing, addressing the low line. It seems like, especially with the convenience of this being recorded, it should be pretty easy for the applicant to address it.
Okay, I just
Tori, you know that you have
for everyone.
well, and Tori, you know that you have 12 staff people that can help you.
I know, but it's not just for my sake. It's for
Tori,
everyone.
that was a joke, meaning we know you don't have to. Well, that was a joke. We know you don't have 12 staff, so I'm sorry. It's like I wish that you did, and you should have. You deserve it.
You deserve it. Everyone up there deserves it.
They work
Agreed.
out here. That's for certain.
Agreed.
All right. Agenda item number 4 has been pulled from the agenda. It was withdrawn by the applicant. That was 295 Calhoun. And as you know, it was the request for a conceptual approval for a new construction mixed use. And they were also going for an extra story based on merit. Agenda number 5 is election of a new chairperson.
So whoever touches their nose last. Yeah, so this is, I'll just explain a little bit. So I've been on BAR long enough that I've actually served under 4, if not 5 chairs, actually 5. We wear them out pretty quick, but I think we have a good candidate in mind. It is not per the ordinance or our own policies that the attorney on the board serve as chair, but we have over the years found that it's a good spot for somebody that understands parliamentary process. And it's a simple voice vote. We just need a nomination in a second, and then we can proceed.
Well, sure, I'll nominate John then.
Okay.
No, this is Leon. I'll second it.
Okay. All right. Let me call the roll real quick. John, you have the motion's on the table, so you can't do anything about it now. The train is coming to you. All right. Ms. Subchuck, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor.
Okay, Mr. Scott,
Yay, in favor.
Mr. Metters.
Yay, in favor.
I guess, John, you do get to vote yay or nay for yourself. So what is
If
your?
I'm allowed to vote, I'll vote yay in favor, although we all may have regrets in the future. I can't promise you I'll always do my job perfectly, but I'll try my best.
Thank you very much.
Perfect
John,
is
it's
the-
like when you get a promotion in the Army, the first time you go out, you pay for all the drinks.
That's very true. That's very true.
We can certainly arrange that.
All right. Well, the motion carries, and so you will. I think you will assume the role at the start of the next meeting, I suppose. Does that make
Excellent.
sense?
Well, do we need, or we have agenda item 6. Jay, would you like to proceed as honorary chairperson for the remainder? Or?
You know what? No, you take it from here.
The BARL now has before it agenda item 6, which is a proposal from BAR staff for board discussion and vote on whether to accept emergency requests for approvals of limited long lead time material in advance of full complete mock-up review.
So I have, I was out when this first got sent out, but I did call Lawrence, and I've called some of you also. I don't think that this should happen. I hear the use of COVID as an excuse for too much in our world now. I work with a firm that's responsible for ordering things and for managing things. And the majority of the time when something doesn't go correctly, it's not related to COVID. It's related to our failure of doing things, scheduling things correctly, getting orders done correctly, getting a owner to buy into something so we can order it. And it very much, whether it's 6A or 6B, it seems to me that this absolutely opens the door to incomplete mock-ups, material that doesn't turn out to be what we hoped it would be, but we've already approved it. I think that whether it's 6A or 6B, I'm not sure, John, exactly how it's working, but the last two applications, I think that it is our responsibility as the architects on the group or the builders on the group or the owners, the planners, the construction managers to adapt to the situation that we're in. I don't think it's actually fair to our community for us to modify these and give more freedom than what is had now by the community in general that's involved in laying our city out here and building our city. Okay, there's my thoughts. I thought I'd open up with it because I've read everybody else's remarks.
I would just say that this is a technical issue on which I feel like I have to defer to staff and their workflow, but I don't have anything to add other than my previous email remarks.
Yeah, I think so. Really, all we're looking at right now is just the emergency matter. This, so I'm looking at the board comments, and it looks like it actually looks like we would be making a wholesale change in the event of a demonstrable extraordinary circumstance beyond the applicant's control, not just COVID, but anything. An applicant may request an approval of a prominent exterior material or element prior to board review of the full and complete mock-up. The submittal process for this emergency approval shall be the same as any other board submission. I was sort of anticipating that what we would probably talk about mostly tonight would be if we were going to introduce any sort of emergency and possibly temporary measure to allow this, because I think there might be circumstances in, presently with supply chain issues, but James is right. Over the years, we've seen a lot of mock-ups that they try to ask for specific approvals, and I think fairly often the contractors are so obsessed about getting out of the ground that they completely miss that the mock-up is on the critical path. And it sort of brings to mind the old adage that a lack of preparation on your part does not constitute an emergency upon mine. So while I would be comfortable doing something as a temporary measure, I think making a wholesale change is probably not advised.
In a Jay, just because I always value what your thoughts are. Why do it temporary? I don't get that. If we're not, because I agree with what you're saying, and I just opening the door, then all of a sudden half the board changes, and then the thought is, well, they gave it temporary, so maybe we should give it, another level of status and move it forward. And I'm just interested.
Yeah, well, I think I'm just sort of anticipating that the reason that this issue has arisen is that staff is fielding a lot of requests for this very thing, and it is really hard to pick apart what's I mean, it's not really city staff's job to diagnose why the mock-up isn't complete yet. You take whatever these applicants tell you at face value for the most part, and I am have y'all seen an increase, I suppose, in requests for this thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and I'm sorry, and I said I was only going to speak once. I knew that wasn't going to be true because of how strongly I feel about this. So what? I mean, if whatever the delays are, whatever they're attributed to, this community is going to be here for hundreds of more years. And changing the way that we process how we make decisions here based on something that's short term doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Okay. I promise I'll try to let that be it.
Well, but things change constantly in life. So, sometimes we have to step back and look at the present situations, and emergency supply chain is horrible all over. Doesn't matter, it's construction materials or anything else. So for temporarily step, I kind of would support this application right now. So.
Well, Jay, if you're looking for a motion, I'll make one.
Okay. Actually, I'm not looking for a motion. John's looking for a motion.
That's right. Mr. Metters, I'd be glad to hear your motion.
I was just on autopilot. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. I mean, I would make a motion to not move forward with the emergency requests for approvals of limited long team material in advance of full complete mock-up reviews.
Is there a second to Mr. Metter's motion?
I would second that.
Okay. So the motion before us is to not make an emergency or temporary exemption related to the approval of materials necessary for mock-up for extreme circumstances or conditions presently. Let's call the roll, since I'm pulling my cheat sheet in front of me. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote?
I have to go nay, not in favor.
Mr. Scott?
Yay, in favor.
Mr. White?
Yay, in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yay, in favor.
And myself, yay, in favor. Did I miss anybody? I'm bouncing back and forth between my cheat sheet.
Nope.
All right, very good. Okay. So Mr. Metters' motion carries, and the request for the emergency provision is for the present time denied.
Okay.
I believe that completes our agenda. Unless there's further business or discussion necessary, I'd be glad to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, John, if I could do, I've never talked this much on a meeting before, but
Sure, please feel free to
Corey,
speak.
well, I'm look forward to meeting you in person and talking with you. Congratulations on getting the job, and welcome to Charleston. And thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for those are high compliments. I did briefly get to see you for 2 seconds when we were looking at the Mason project, and both thought highly of that. But I'm glad you were. I assume you're feeling better. You look like you're feeling better, and I too look forward to working with you in a very collegial environment. When we have votes tonight to go both ways or split, I think we all feel like we have an opportunity to be heard, and we respect each other's profession.
Speak for yourself.
Congratulations, John.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
Thank
Corey,
you
I
all.
look
Y'all-
forward to working with
Thank
you in
very
person.
much.
I look
Thank
forward
you.
to working with all of you.
Indeed.
All right, y'all have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Hi,
Thanks.
bye.